Hey guys, Petko here, and today we're gonna talk about a rating guide, which was a very long anticipated one, so I finally decided to do it for all of you that have been asking me. This guide wouldn't include every single detail boss fight. I'm not gonna include how I fight bosses, how I approach bosses in a new tier, but I'm gonna give you the basic general overview of every single detail that goes into my build and why and how I play them. I'm gonna start with the race choice, followed by Covenant Soulbind choices, right? I'm gonna talk about Necro versus Night Fae, which one is better. I'm gonna talk about different builds, different talents, like Primal Elementalist versus Ice Fury, different legendary choices, Windspeaker, Echoes, Skybreaker, when and where. We'll talk about stats, and then followed by gems and enchants, where we should be focusing on trinkets, which are very important. I'm gonna touch also how to sim, so you guys can find your best possible gear once you get more gear from around the raid. And at the end, I'm just gonna make kind of a summary. What do I think about Shaman in a current rating state, and where do I think it stands as of now speaking. Without further ado, let's begin. Starting with the race choice, does race actually matter in rating? As I already said it many times in Mythic Plus in rating, race has very little to do with your DPS. It has a very minor DPS adjustment, right? So if you're not hardcore in the game, if you're not like an advanced player, not rushing for like cutting edge or like, you know, not doing like these kind of small min-maxing things, it doesn't matter what you play. You play whatever you feel like is the best. Obviously, there's some races that are going to be better than others. In this case, Torrent is the best race for Mythic Plus in rating, and I also like to play it the most. And for PvP it's Orc, but we talk about rating today, not PvP. But yeah, TLDR is gonna be Torrent for Horde, and for Alliance it's gonna be Dwarf, regular Dwarf, not Dark Iron Dwarf. Next on the list is gonna be a Covenant Soulbind choices. Now, if you haven't checked my video about Night Fae versus Necro, which I released a couple weeks ago, I suggest you to go and check it out right now before you watch this video. So you can kind of see the full comparison between Night Fae and Necro, and why do I think a specific Soulbind or a Covenant could be better. In this case, I'm going to talk about only Night Fae and Necro because I believe Kyrian and Ventir are far behind Night Fae and Necro in terms of rating. Now, my personal choice would be Night Fae. I'm going to be playing Night Fae in rating, but Necro, and more specifically Bonesmith Hammer Soulbind, is going to be extremely good. In most of the cases, will be better than Night Fae. The reason why I chose Night Fae is because I would like to play also Mythic Plus parallelly when I raid, because this time I don't play well at first race. I don't have to have the best Soulbind, the best Covenant for raiding. I can just focus on my things, focus on Mythic Plus more, and also raid as well, right? So I'm gonna go with Nia, and I'm gonna go with Night Fae. But if you're playing Necro, make sure that you play Bonesmith Hammer, right? That is gonna be your best Soulbind. Now, let's talk about Night Fae Soulbinds, okay? So Nia is gonna be the best build because it gives you a more single target, which comes from pretty much Nia 2's burst. That is kind of the path you want to go for, which is gonna be double potency and Nia burst. As a finesse and endurance conduit, you can choose whatever you feel like. It doesn't really matter. I myself usually go with Thunderous Pulse, which is kind of a move and speed bump. And I'm also going with a Vital Acceleration, which is in my opinion very useful when you have a downtime of your main fire elemental, so you can have extra defensive and also higher health, which can make you survive some dangerous fights. Now, the reason why I play Nia is also because of a growth in invigoration, which is pretty much a passive mastery and health, which again is something that I cherish a lot because you get to have just pretty much passive damage increase by just like this, right? So I think it's very important to play that one. Now for potency conduits, again, Cold Flame is going to be the best potency conduit out there. It doesn't matter rating, Mythic Plus, PvP, Cold Flame is going to be the best ever potency conduit. As a second potency conduit, you will be playing Pyroclastic Shock, which will be the play for any other Covenant than Necro. If you're playing Necro, you want to play Tumbling Waves as your second potency conduit. Alright, now let's talk about builds. What is going to be the main build for raiding? Now, the main build for raiding is going to be always Echoes of the Elements on the first row. Second row is going to be Elemental Blast. And then the third row is going to be optional. Usually Spirit Wolf does the magic because it gives you movement speed, which generally makes you faster in some fights, could be useful. On a fourth row is going to be always Master of the Elements whenever you need single target, prior damage, and Storm Elemental is only for heavy AoE fights. For example, if you remember Castle Natria, Sun King Salvation, or Soul Age in general was kind of a perfect example of heavy AoE fights combined with a slight single target prior damage, which where Ecos of the Great Sundering shined the best. But most of the time for raiding, you're going to be playing Master of the Elements. On the fifth row, Nature's Guardian all the way, or Windrush Totem. Now, if you have a lot of Bumpkins in your party or other Shamans, you might not find as useful to play Windrush. And that's why I would suggest you just play Nature's Guardian, which is pretty much like a small defensive for you. And it's also a passive, so you don't have to press it at all. I think in my opinion, that could be the best. And now the biggest question. Primal Elementalist versus Ice Fury. Which one and why? Now, in my opinion, Ice Fury is the superior build, right? It is a superior build, it does more single target, but it's a 10 times more complex than Primal Elementalist. So I'm gonna advise you, if you are a newbie Shaman, if you're a beginner Shaman, if you just picked up Shaman a couple months ago, Ice Fury build is extremely hard, possibly one of the hardest builds to play in raiding. So if you play Ice Fury and if you don't know how to play it, you're losing DPS. I would suggest you play Primal Elementalist. And once you feel confident in your rotation, then you can start swapping Ice Fury. I'm going to show you later in the video how I play both builds and you can kind of compare. But Ice Fury, generally, it is pretty hard to play. Not easy at all. Last row is always Stormkeeper all the time. You never play anything else. It is pretty much the best talent. Now, as we talk about the builds, let's talk about Legendaries. Your go-to Legendary for raiding is going to be Windspeaker. That is going to be your best Legendary for raiding. It gives you the most single target and generally it's the most versatile. So that's why I'm going to be playing most of the time. Now, you will be playing also Ecos sometimes. For example, when there's like a heavy odds, when there's like a 2-3 target stacked all the time, when there's like a active odd cliff, which means like odds every 30-40 seconds with a boss, then Ecos shines the best, right? Again, that's gonna be the case on some of the fights, but not on all of the fights. I would suggest you Windspeaker default and Ecos only whenever you feel like, for example, swapping to Ecos. Again, I'm gonna be making a Patreon page about every single boss and every single build that I'm gonna be playing on every single boss for Heroic and Mythic. If you guys wanna check it out, I'm gonna put them below and they're gonna be out probably later this week or beginning of next week. I'll do my best. Stats. Now, what are the stats for raiding? Now, this is a kind of a controversial topic and most of the people have different opinion on it, and the right answer is it depends. It really depends. It's not like a haste verse and that's it. Anyone's like always haste in verse. No. So stats vary on your overall stats, right? So in my opinion, having at least 15% haste is a crucial for raiding, because it allows you to have a faster global cooldowns and also you wouldn't miss as many globals, which means if you play especially Ice Fury build, if you play with like a low haste, you're gonna miss Ice Furies all the time and you're gonna lose DPS. So my personal preference for haste is between 15 and 20% value, and I usually incline to play around 20% most of the time. That's what I feel comfortable with. Now that's with Ice Fury. If you play Primal Elementalist, around 15%-ish, fine. Now, Mastery, the big question. How much Mastery do I need? If you play Necro, I would say at least 25-30% Mastery is a good value. But if you play Night Fae, especially Night Fae Nia, you don't need that much Mastery because you have a passive Mastery from Nia, right? So you could get away even with like a no Mastery at all for raiding, which is perfectly fine. But again, little Mastery to like a mid Mastery is fine. On Night Fae, I usually prefer to play between 15 and 20 Mastery. If I'm Necro, I prefer to play between 25-ish, 30. It's a good value. Verse, again, just like Haste, you want to have it at around 20%. And Crit as well, around 18 to 20 to 22, 23% for a single target. Obviously, when you play Ecos, you shift that, you put more Crit. You put more Crit, more Haste, less Verse. But Windspeaker definitely needs less Crit. So 20, 20, 22, 23 Crit is fine, especially if you play Kabbalist Trinket, or if you play, for example, the new Trinket from Kel'Thuzad for casters, which pretty much is kind of a Kabbalist but better option. is gonna give you like massive powers. Again, that's what I play, and I feel like those kind of are the best talents. But again, I'm gonna advise you to sim yourself always, because every single one of you have a different stat priority, every single one of you, because you have different items. So I'm gonna attach later this video how to sim. You guys can actually understand how simming works. Next on the list, gems and enchants. Well, this is also connected to the simming. How do I know which gem is better for me? How do I know which enchant is better for me? Now, there's gonna be always one enchant that's gonna be better for you, and that's gonna be weapon enchant. Always Sinful Revelation for single target. And if there's like several mobs, like a kind of AoE fights as ours said, SOG, Stolen Generals, or Sunking Salvation kind of type of fight, then Celestial Guidance becomes slightly better than Sinful Revelation. But if you talk about pure single target, then Sinful is slightly better. Same thing goes on your chest. Having Eternal Insight, which is pretty much the one that gives you a 20% intellect and also a percent chance to proc a shadow damage, is far better for a single target compared to like a pure all 30 plus all stats, right? Again, you can get away with playing both, but for me, Eternal Insight is slightly better. If you're looking to min-max and get slight edge on your DPS, go for it. Back enchant doesn't really matter. You can play 30 stamina or 20 stamina, 30 leech, whatever you want. Back enchant doesn't matter. When it comes down to sockets and the ring enchants, I'm gonna talk about that one later in the sim video, so I kind of explain you how does that work. But generally, you put enchants and sockets on whatever you feel like you're missing out of your overall stats, secondary stats, right? So if you're lacking mastery, you put mastery. If you're lacking crit, you put crit and enchants. If you're lacking haste, you put haste enchants and haste sockets, right? So it depends, right? It's not the easy answer, yes or no. Trinkets. What are gonna be the best trinkets? Well, nobody knows for now because final tuning hasn't passed yet, but I'm pretty confident that Forbidden Necromantic Tome, which is the passive trinket from Kyoto, is gonna be the best trinket for us, or as a passive. 100% guarantee that one. And unused trinket, we don't know as of now speaking, but we're assuming that once tuning passes, we're gonna take a look at it, and we're looking to have a raid trinket as our best trinket as of now speaking. Now there's several good options, but Ebon Soul Vice seems to be right now the best option. But again, nobody knows for certain, and we're gonna wait until they announce the final tuning. And once they do, I'm gonna update you guys. I'm gonna make a separate topic about it, and we're gonna talk about all trinkets and stuff. I'll update you, don't worry. Now to the most important part of the video is how to actually play the build, right? So that's something that you guys have been interested. So I'm gonna show you how I do it. Now, let's talk about Master of the Elements empowerment first of all. Now, what is gonna be your priority to empower? It's gonna be always empower Stormkeeper first. You always wanna empower Stormkeeper first, no matter what. After this, it's gonna be always Earthshock, followed by Elemental Blast. And if you play Ice Fury is gonna be 4 on the list to empower, and Lightning Bolt is gonna be the end. That's pretty much for Windspeaker build. If you're playing Ecos build, you want to empower always Stormkeeper first, and then Ecos Earthquake second. And third one is gonna be Earthshock, and fourth one is gonna be Elemental Blast. Fifth one, Ice Fury. If you don't play Ice Fury, then it's gonna be Lightning Bolt. Pretty simple. Now, what is the kind of a general thumb of rule when you play Ice Fury? Now, you don't want to waste any Ice Fury stacks. Now, there's a big misconception in the community that you have to empower every single Elemental Blast, every single Earthshock, every single Ice Fury. You don't have to. Now, if you do that, you're gonna lose so many procs. Focus on spending your Ice Furies and spending your Elemental Blast on cooldown, right? So making sure that you play around it. Let's talk about openers. Openers are very, very important, and in my opinion, kind of the best way to be better than somebody else, right? So this opener is gonna work for every single covenant, every single build. You always wanna start with the pre-casting Stormkeeper 5 seconds before the fight, always. So you pre-cast Stormkeeper 5 seconds before the fight, and you always wanna start with the Elemental Blast into Flame Shock to the target. Now, if you play Necrolord, you can do Elemental Blast into Primordial Wave. It's really good. Alright, so one of the final subjects of today's raid guide is going to be how to sim, simming. If you don't have the simulation craft add-on, go in and download it from any other source. CurseForge is where I usually get mine, but anywhere else is just fine. After that, you type /simc, you get that sim and you put it in a raid bot. And usually I like to sim with top gear. I like to see, for example, which item sims the best, and based on this I kind of adjust and choose what is the best. That's kind of one of the best ways for you to find out exactly what sims the best for you. You can also try to go in stat weight or talent compare, stuff like this, but again, I don't really like them as much. But if you want to check it out, go and check it out. Then you can see, for example, what stat could be higher and stuff like this. Obviously it's not a simming guide. There are plenty of simming guides out there on YouTube, so go and check it out. That's how I usually do it. I check top gear, I check which items make sense. Usually I use for ratings, usually patchwork, what boss 5 minutes, and that's pretty much how I check them out. And then I choose the items based on what sims the best, and then I kind of construct my own build. And then if I want to check my stat weights, for example, if my haste or versus enough, I use that. Again, could be not as accurate when it comes down to stat weight, but it's not a bad representation if you like checking stuff out. But yeah, usually top gear is the best, and drop optimizer is useful if you're wondering which one of the bosses, heroic or mythic, could give you the best gear and stuff. So that's how I do it myself. Alright, and again, final thoughts on exactly what I think about Elemental Shaman in raiding. Currently, I feel like we are in a very good position. I don't think we are meta for raiding, but I think we're in a pretty good spot. I would say if I need to rank them from 0 to 10, I'll give us around 7.5 to 8. I think our damage profile is amazing. Our single target AoE, cleave, prior damage is good. I think our department lacks kind of a self-sustain, and we also lack immunity and raid cooldown. Right. I mean, Windrush Totem is very useful, but if you have, let's say, balanced druid or any other druid, they can give a Stamping Roar. It's fine. Kind of replaces the Windrush Totem. Also, there can be other shamans that uses that, for example, Presto Shaman or Enhancer or another LA Shaman. It becomes less of a valuable option for you. So I think if you get a introduce, let's say, raid cooldown, something like a Skybreaker, right? That could be potentially very, very strong, right? Sorry, Sky Fury, not Skybreaker. If you have Sky Fury, let's say for raiding, that would be very strong back in like TBC, right? We had a Sky Fury, but now we just don't have it anymore. Yeah. But anyway, I think it's a very, very strong pick, and I think you wouldn't be, you'd be amazed how hard it is to play Ice Fury, especially in raiding, and it's actually fun and engaging. So I recommend, if you have never played LA Shaman in raiding, go and check it out. You will have a tons of fun, and it's very strong for Mythic Plus as well. You can kind of on the side play Mythic Plus, and it's also very good for PvP. So all around based, very, very solid pick as of now speaking, season 2 of Shadowlands. If you guys enjoyed the video, like guys, if you guys want to see more information about Elemental Shamans, if you want to see more guides specifically about LA and raiding Mythic Plus, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe as well, and that can make me motivated to do more videos. And if you want to see full breakdown of each fight on Heroic and Mythic, I'm going to be making soon Patreon posts about it. I'm going to break down every single fight, how I usually parse, and how you can improve your parses. Starting with Heroic and then going with Mythic. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.